Hello again. So if you didn't watch the previous video, I recommend you do, but in it I launched to orbit a Venus probe at a good time for a Venus launch window, and now everything is ready. I'm even aligned with the node to send myself towards Venus. Okay, so it's going to be 6.5 hours. Now I'm not sure offhand how well boil-off is behaving in the current versions of real fuels, but in reality, I also believe I used a pretty insulated, a fairly well insulated tank type, because was testing this and I believe I was losing a lot of liquid oxygen. So I switched to the tank type that this is, so that the liquid oxygen will stay longer. But realistically, I should be losing, at least 0.01. I should be losing a little bit of liquid oxygen, and maybe that'll increase as I cycle. But now I'm going to give MechJeb. So the way I got this, I just usually use this tool because it's a great jackknife tool. Maneuver node editor. It also has I always set this a little higher in real solar system as well, because it is really difficult to hit the exact meters per second, particularly with the thrust level you're often hitting with these craft. So I'm going to tell it to execute node. So the first thing it's going to do is use my RCS to get there. It's going to lock SAS, and then it's going to time warp. So yeah, you can see I'm losing a little bit of liquid oxygen. So kerosene and liquid oxygen is a pretty good mix for that, actually. You can sit in orbit for a not insubstantial amount of time. The Russians even plan to use kerosene and liquid oxygen on their moon mission. So after 3 days, they'd still have most of that liquid oxygen when they got to the moon. So you can do missions where you're in orbit for more than a couple of hours or days using kerosene and liquid oxygen, because with a bit of insulation you can keep liquid oxygen around a heck of a lot better than you can do with liquid hydrogen. So it's approaching the window. So I would say a minute 30 before the window. So when this is, okay, so the one thing I believe I do still have to do myself is ullage. So RCS on, I'm hitting H, so now this is stable. So MechJeb won't do that for me, but that's okay. As long as I know what I'm doing, I have it ready. And it didn't ignite the engine, but hey, that's all right. It tried to throttle up, and there we go. Now I don't like to activate the engine and not throttle it up, because just in case MechJeb or I accidentally increased the throttle, it would spend the one ignition I had. So again, the two things I had to do manually were to have the RCS on and give it a little bit of a bump forward with H to settle the fuel and get very stable, and then I had to ignite. I noticed the throttle went up. The MechJeb was saying we want to throttle forward now, but something about how I told it to auto execute didn't trigger it to stage. But I mean, if I had done the massive amount of hard work that Sarbian et al. Have done on MechJeb, I would make that tiny change so it detected if it throttled up and had no thrust for half a second or a second, then to stage. But again, I'm totally fine myself just figuring out what's going on and just turning it on myself. So now this bus, pretty good amount of thrust actually. It's going to be quite a short burn, considering it's going to be enough delta V to send it away from Earth. I usually like this auto cam, but recently for things I will go to the free cam, because then I can do more pretty pans of what you see around the craft. So this is just my standard DX11 Windows 32 install with all my crazy tweaks. Again, hopefully Pingo Pete releases his setup soon, so I can see what he hasn't done and maybe add some of my tweaks to it. But Pingo Pete's a lot closer to having a kind of an easy to share public profile of all the graphic tweaks than I am. So I think I can actually time warp. I go Alt and then the time warp key to just do a quick physical time warp. Not too much. If I went to 2 or 3, it might wobble. So here at 3 or 4. It doesn't look like it's wobbling at all here. These controls seem to be very stable, so let's go to 3. Whereas if I was here and I just hit regular time warp, it would say, can't do that, we're accelerating. But to save a little bit of time, I can just hold Alt and hit time warp, and it will do a physical time warp. Which I kind of wish was the default, like if it detected, but whatever. All I have to do is hold Alt, so no complaints here. Okay, so we're approaching the end of this. MechJeb will hopefully recognize, and there, it shut itself down. Sometimes it would do a crazy swing around, like if I had set it to a precision of 0.1 meters per second, because it overshoots and it tries to correct itself. Those are things you can do in stock, which you can't do in a real solar system, because it would expect to be able to throttle down, spin around with a reaction wheel, all kinds of stuff it can't actually do. So I do have this kerosene liquid oxygen. And so this RCS, it won't show in here, but you can see it has a low RCS efficiency, ISP, and that's what these spheres are. So they're to kind of correct this burn. Like this engine is down, even though this says I have that delta V, because I have no ignitions, I don't have that delta V. So now let me go and take a look. So that burn completed. MechJeb does way better precision burns than I do, and it looks like we even have a Venus encounter. So if I go focus view on Venus, it will change how it shows that view, and that is not at all a bad encounter with Venus. So I'm going to turn on my RCS and just try quick thrusts forward and backwards with H and N, and it looks like if I hold N, I will get closer to Venus. So I could do a lot better than that if I go maneuver node editor. Right, I guess I'd have to set a maneuver mode for right now, node right now, which kind of wish there was a button for that, just create a node for right now, but in practice, if I was thinking ahead, that's what I would have done. I would have created a node for where I am now and just done tiny tweaks, because right now I'm just kind of guessing. I really just did experimental H and N, found that N was getting me closer, so now that's 56,500 kilometers from Venus. So now I'm going to try I, K, J, and L. So this is just the little bit of high test peroxide, that's what HTP is, to see if I can get a little bit closer with that. And that's about as close as I can get, it looks like. I can probably do a burn kind of mid-course, a mid-course correction, and get closer. And I might do that. So let myself get, So usually I can use, so here's a cool tool. So if I had solar panels that could rotate, let's say, or for some reason I want, so I could go advanced, reference, sun, and I think it's down. And so if I told it to go down, gave it RCS power, and went execute, it would point the top of my craft to the sun, or vice versa, which would be really nice for solar panels. But because of how my solar panels are, that will not work because they're kind of angled sideways. So I'm going to wait until it looks like I'm kind of, I'm going to let it rotate all the way around. Whoa, not that much. Okay, let's get so that it's kind of perpendicularly rotated relative to the sun. Okay, and then I'm going to cheat in my videos. There we go. Okay, so now I'm perpendicular to the sun. Now I just need to use RCS to roll. Come on, RCS. There we go. So I'm just going to get it into a roll. And I guess for realistic reasons, you might have heard of a barbecue roll. So on the way to the moon, the Apollo craft would go into a light roll like this because the sun is going to be heating whichever side of the craft is in the path of in the way of the sun. And so in a light roll like this, this area will get heated, and then it'll be heated as it goes in the sun, and then it'll pass back into the shadow on the opposite side, and that will allow it to cool down. And so by being in this roll, half of it isn't in brutal heating environment, and the opposite side being frozen out. So it looks like it's a really bright craft. I don't have Planet Shine on it. I was having a little trouble installing it through CCAN. Not sure why that is. But that's why it looks nicely lit, and if I had Planet Shine, the bottom side would be nicely lit with blue light, which would be fantastic. But in practice, this is actually just the inaccurate ambient light adjust, just smattering it from light everywhere. Whereas I kind of like this look better myself, but I know it also doesn't look as good on video, the sharp shadow. But there you can really see, half of the craft at any given time will be shaded, and the other half will be in sunlight. So we're eating a good bit of electric charge, but let me see, where is the Able Avionics? Analyze, I could say one quick trick to use, by any means, I am not a person to judge. If you want to make sure you have battery when you get to Venus and you're kind of done doing everything here, you can right click on the battery and come on, and lock it. So there, like this charge will always remain, nothing will eat it. So even if I lose control of the craft while that's that case, I don't care, right? Because I don't need control of the craft until I get in the region of Venus. Let me just turn this back on. But if people prefer one way or the other how it looks, let me know in the comments. But I definitely prefer it on the lower light side, whereas there, it's a little closer to how I usually have it. But I think that might look better in videos. So one of the most awesome things you'll see sending a probe to the moon or Venus is the Earth as you head away from it. So to me, just at first glance, this looks like, well, I'm at a really high altitude, so you get to see a lot of the Earth from higher altitude. This looks like South America to me. So you've got, I don't know my geography by any means, but Peru, the Andes, things like that, and, whoa, lost my rotation, and Brazil, which is huge here. And then North America way up that way. So let's watch the Earth recede as I just finish out this video. So I'm going to lose all the liquid oxygen on the way to Venus. I'm going, so yeah, this bus I'm just holding on to for the little thrusters, so I can fine tune that, because to try to stay somewhat historical or sane, my tiny little craft here, my real Venera, has no active control at all. It's just a flyby craft. It's just going to take pictures and data from Venus as close as it can get to it and just fly right by it. Even though right now my craft is quite hefty, if I separate off, this upper craft is like 100 kilo, 150 to, it's a really small craft. So there you go. You get to see Earth recede in the camera as we float away. I have persistent rotation, so my craft rotates in this beautiful manner. So if you thanks for watching this video. That's the second of a 2-video series of me launching and sending away my first probe to Venus, which will probably be one of my last videos for a bit in RP-0 here, because I want to start over again and have a more kind of challenging career and really test out test flight a bit more. And as you hit a certain distance here again, you can see the clouds and the ground no longer know who should be on top. Z-fighting, I think that's called. Alright, so thank you so much for watching. Like it if you like it, comment if you have something more complicated to say. Goodbye.